Well, I want to start off with about my grandparents. Both sets of grandparents were from China. My maternal grandfather was a cook, okay, and my grandmother was a maid. And this grandfather had children with a previous wife that passed away, and then he married my grandmother and had 8 children, 5 girls and 3 boys. Okay. My mother was the 4th child and worked as a waitress. Her name was Catherine. The oldest daughter of my mother's oldest sister's name was Elsie, and she ran a restaurant and then a lunch wagon. So Elsie was married to a man, George Goog, that was a taxi driver, and they had 6 children. My mother's oldest brother, Barney, he was a baker, and he owned a bakery and named it after one of his daughters, Shan's Bakery. And he had 6 children, one of which went to Graceland and now lives in Maryland. Maryland. My mother's next sister was named Kai, and she worked at a school cafeteria and did a lot of baking. And she and her husband, named Chang, made a lot of coconut pudding or haupia. And they had 1 child, a daughter named Nellie, who came to Graceland and became missionaries with her husband, Kenny Chan Ming, to Japan and Korea. My Aunt Kai and Uncle Chang adopted 3 children, twin boys and their sister. The twin boys with help with getting the coconuts from the coconut tree to make the coconut pudding. Then came 2 brothers in my mother's family. My Uncle Herbert Ng, who was an airplane pilot who never married. And then my Uncle Richard Ng was a fireman. He married a Japanese girl named Sue, and they had 3 girls, Karen, Charlene, and Cheryl. Okay, and he had become a member of the church and attended church with his family. The oldest daughter, Karen, attended Graceland for a year. My maternal grandparents ended up with 2 daughters, Molly and Lena. Molly married a man named Jesse Moniz, and she worked at a school cafeteria and did not have any children of her own. Jesse had a hobby of raising parakeets and had a huge cage built next to his house. And I remember going to their house and watching all the parakeets fly, and that was fun. And he also crocheted. I have a piece that he crocheted on my dresser. So it was my Aunt Girlie, or Lena, who was the youngest of the 8 children of my maternal grandparents, was 15 years old when I came along. And Aunt Girlie married a man named Alan Keno, who was part Indian, and they had 3 sons and adopted a daughter, Larry, Francis, Richard, and Darlene. And Girlie taught me how to make the sponge cakes that I used to do. And she lived 3 houses down the street, down the lane from my grandmother's house. So that's then my paternal grandparents, which you can see on his house. Anyway, my father, let me hear a kiss. My paternal, yes. My father, Harold Tin-Chi Wong, was one of 3 children, and his parents were Wang Guai, Kwai Wang, and Lam Shi Wang.
That's Phyllis.
My paternal grandmother was the fifth wife of my grandfather. And Wang Guai, he was a rich plantation owner and a Chinese consul for a year. So my father's mother,
Where are we?
Lam Shi, was a faithful Christian and prayed on her knees next to her bed. When I went to visit them, she had a pillow next to her bed and would pray. So my father's sister, Charlotte Wang Chin, moved to California. Then she eventually moved to New York and married a man who had a restaurant. That was my Aunt Charlotte there. Okay. And she lived on the fourth floor in New York there, in Chinatown, New York. And she did not have any children. And we eventually got her to move to Creston when she didn't have any children. When her husband died, we went and got her from New York City, and she moved with us in Creston. And until my father's brother, Clement, took care of his mother and made sure she had a ride to her church or where she worshiped. So my father worked at an insurance company. He did not drive and took a bus and walked a lot. And he helped my mother cook supper at home. He was good. So, did I say, I am an only child. What I remember as a child.
You said you're an only child, is that what you said?
Yes, I didn't have any brothers or sisters. I was an only child. But I lived with my maternal grandparents next to the Palama branch of the Reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. My mother, aunt, and uncle attended church, which was located next to my grandparents' house in a narrow lane called Ma'o Lane in the Kapalama area of Honolulu, Hawaii. The church building was the size of a two-car garage located in the front yard of my grandparents' next door neighbor. So I could see the congregation when they're meeting from my grandmother's porch. I walked to school, elementary, intermediate, and high school, while living with my grandparents. My parents would come over the weekends and share with groceries, and my parents did not drive and would take the trolley bus or walk to places.
Hey, Paul, do this one.
When you zoom in,
I think
stay there for about
it
30
was-
seconds.
Let
that's
me just say, that's her Sunday school class. That's on her grandmother's porch next to the church, and that's Phyllis standing up.
Yeah,
But that's a Sunday school, and this is Phyllis's birthday, but that's the house she lived in next to the church.
Where's Phyllis in this
Yes.
picture?
Right there, that tall one at the back.
Point to it in front of your body.
Because
If he moves and zooms in, it gets jiggly.
Bill, point there in your sector.
Did you see that there?
And get your hand off of it so it doesn't
No,
jump.
Did you
point
know
to
that?
it on the
Yeah.
picture, Bill.
John.
That's good.
He don't hear you.
She's the one standing.
Yes,
Yep, point to it.
I can't see what I'm doing.
Oh, I see, well,
I want you to lay in front of it,
Yeah,
and I want you,
I'm standing
Whatever you
standing
do,
next to
gotta
the
let
door,
go of that.
I'm trying my best.
and that's the porch of
Even
my
if it's not
grandmother's
blown
house.
up, just
And so
leave
I
it
can
there,
see
because
the-
it would drive me crazy upstairs.
By the way,
It was
let
like
me
this the
say,
whole time.
when she came to Graceland in 57 to 59, when she came back after 59,
the house is
those
gone.
houses were tore down for H1, Hawaii won a big both grandparents, and they lived miles and miles apart. Houses was tore down because of H1.
So I walked to school, elementary, intermediate, and high school while living with my grandparents. My parents would come over the weekend and, did I say that? And share groceries, okay. And it was during my intermediate school that I took piano lessons and then played for church. I did attend church camps and reunions during high school years. And then I came to Graceland for 2 years and stayed off campus at Benson's for my first year. Then stayed with a cousin and her family, Nellie and Chanmi, during the summer and helped at Oreo camps. Okay.
Great,
Take
look
one of-
here. It's hard to tell. This one right here is a picture of 1957, standing in front of, in the winter,
Benson's
see the
house.
snow? At Benson's house, you know,
That's Roy
Doc
Benson.
Benson's
Yes.
house, I mean, you know, the
Yeah.
organ
We stayed
teacher
in
at
the
Graceland?
basement.
He lives up,
Roy Benson, yeah.
the Roy Benson, the pizza shack, is that Cherry? You go
Yeah.
up 2 blocks, and that's where
Yeah, that's right.
six girls lived in the basement of that house as a dormitory. People were living all over Lamoni at that time in dormitory, in
Yeah,
houses.
walked, yeah, on campus.
Walker was the only building that was built.
No, Harold, yeah, Harold.
House.
Yeah, off campus, Harold House. That's, yeah, Harold House. Yeah, right. Okay. All right, and then, so I went back to Hawaii, and then I worked at the Willows restaurant in the accounts and receivable, okay? And then, that's it. Okay. And I went back to Honolulu in 1959, and I lived with my parents then, and my paternal grandmother and uncle. I then went to business school, and then I worked at a Willow's restaurant doing accounts receivable. That year, I made enough money to buy me a car, because
Wait a
my
minute,
father
wait a minute,
did
wait a
not
minute.
drive. They rode the bus, so I had a Chevy 2-car. After
Wait.
learning how to drive with some help from an uncle and an instructor there.
Oh, right there's the car. Look at that. The only car that the whole family ever owned.
Yeah, that's the only. Well, there's the car.
Chevy.
Yes. And that's my father cleaning my car. Kept it nice. Okay.
Now, this is for Rick.
Oh, Rich.
Rich.
Anyway, in 1960, I needed, well, let's see now. I worked in the Army with the finance accounting office at Fort Shafter, which was close to where my parents lived.
Where you were.
Then that's in Fort Shafter there, and then, so in 1968,
No, we gotta, that's the major
yeah,
awarding her
For the month, Employee
a
of the Month.
certificate of the month
yeah, yeah.
award, Employee of the Month.
Yeah, they had every month.
In 1966, that picture was taken.
Zoomers are getting feedback. I turned it down here.
So in 1968, I needed a change in my life and came back to Graceland and took up education. At the same time, Bill had just got back to Graceland for his second year. As I was studying in the library, Bill came up to me and asked if I was thirsty.
And she said,
I said, I'm thirsty.
It's pretty smooth, Bill, pretty smooth.
So that ended that invitation. Then I heard rumors in the dorm from Mary Lou Clark that Bill was wanting to invite me to his club activity, but it got rained out. Bill stayed in Lamoni that summer and worked on the downtown swimming pool. And I stayed in Lamoni to attend summer school and lived in the dorm. I don't know if you know, Kathy Tennant and I lived in the dorm for summer school. And we both were engaged that summer. Kathy got engaged to Bob Ellswick, and Bill and I were engaged. Bill offered me the engagement ring at the shipment's back door, because I used to visit the shipments there.
Let me just say, I took her out on her first date on June 2nd. We got engaged in July 10th and married August 24th. Get that picture.
So anyway, Bill offered me the engagement ring at the shipment's back door kitchen. And I thought it would be more romantic at the lake. So he drove
Hold on.
to the lake after our dinner where we met the police officer. And
A highway
and
patrolman.
he checked to see if we had any beer in our car. And we had a bottle of kimchi. Do you know what?
In a brown bag.
We were married that summer in Dearborn, Michigan. My mother and aunt, one of the aunts happened to be in California that summer and took the bus to Lamoni and then to Dearborn, Michigan for our wedding. For our honeymoon, we went to Niagara Falls, then we came back to Lamoni and lived above where Hy-Vee used to be. Well, yeah, I
We went to more than Niagara Falls. We went to all the church historic spots. Palmyra, Kirtland Temple, Nauvoo, all over.
So I graduated with a teacher's degree in 1969 and worked in Creston as a second grade teacher for 2 years. And then I stayed home where Jennifer was born. And so we were active both with the Creston congregation. And then we moved here in March 2010, I think, and bought Jim Brady's house. That's what I did.
Uh-oh, what happened to my questions?
You.
I was gonna say, what'd you do?
I moved your chair.
I did bring up.
I'm gonna put this back up. This is their little congregation that was in a 2-car garage before,
Oh, yes.
Oh, wow.
and Phyllis is in there holding a kid out in the center somewhere,
Yes.
holding a little kid.
Yeah, there, a little baby. Yes. And
Right
that's
there,
next door to my house,
that's
my
Phyllis right
grandmother's
there.
house. And the people that lived in back of that house, they were from Samoa. Anyway, they had 3 sons, and her father gave that property for the church, part of that. And that's how our church was built in front of that house.
I gotta explain, it's really interesting.
This-
The lane that they lived on, you and I would call an alley, okay? What people did was, they'd have a house facing the street, they would have a backyard, they'd sell their backyard so people could build a house facing the alley, and they'd build it. Well, what happened was, the people who built the house on the alley had a little front yard facing the alley, and they donated that little front yard to build this church on. And that's where, and back in those days, the church is segregated. This was called the Chinese congregation. And then they had a Japanese, and then they had a Haole, white people.
So when did your grandparents come to Hawaii from China? You said they all were
Yeah.
born in China.
Right, right. about when, probably, not sure.
But were you born when they came, or did you?
No, no,
Okay,
they were
you were born
here.
in Hawaii.
Yes, I was born. In fact, I think my parents were born in.
Okay.
Let me say one thing. I think it's so fascinating about her uncle that was the rich, not her uncle, her grandfather that was the rich one, had 5 wives. Phyllis's
My grandmother was.
father
fifth.
was from the 5th wife. But the interesting thing is, he came from southeast China, and he was born in 1838 and left to go to San Francisco to the gold rush in 1850. Now, he was 12 years old.
Oh, wow.
Now, I don't know how they got the money or what the thing was, but he came to the gold rush in California, was dissatisfied. You know, there had to be a jillion Chinese there, you know, railroads and all that, and he didn't like it. And in 5 years later, he showed up, but he's still only 17. He showed up in Hawaii, and that's where he stayed. He got tied up in selling and trading rice, and he become a rich merchant
Plantation owner.
in Hawaii.
Was he able
I'll
to
put
share?
this back up. This is his house and all of his servants and concubines. That picture was taken in 1900, and his oldest child is in the arms of one of them up there, auntie, who lived with us. But
You're joking when you're joking when you say concubines.
No, he's not.
They were wives, not concubines.
no, they were wives.
Yeah.
He married a Hawaiian gal, and they had a kid, and the kid was in that picture. But they got a divorce. Then he kept marrying people ladies, that wouldn't produce any heirs. And they finally married Phyllis's grandmother, who produced 3 kids. And Phyllis is the only byproduct of those 3 kids.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm an own.
I'm a little concerned about this information going out over the internet.
Anyway,
But the other wives stayed in the home and lived there?
No, I don't think so.
did you say
Some of us in China, yeah, you know. some
she
of
was
us in
raised
China.
by her grandparents, not her parents?
And that was my maternal grandparents, not my, and this is my paternal. And so after I came back from Graceland, then I lived with my parents, and they took care of my paternal grandmother and her other. She had only 3 children, and my father was the only one that had any children, and I'm the only child. So the other two, his sister lived in New York City, in Chinatown, New York City. And when she lost her husband and lived alone in New York City, we went and got her and brought her back to Creston.
By the way,
And
she lived alone for almost 40 years.
An apartment on the 4th floor in Chinatown. And we went to see
Right
her.
on. If you ever been to Chinatown, Manhattan, Mott Street is the main highway road of Chinatown, Mott. And she lived at 37 Mott.
How long did she live with you in Creston?
She lived till she was 100, so
Oh,
I
yeah,
was 90.
we went and got her when she was 95.
95.
She lived by herself till she was 95. We went and picked her up, flew her back home, and she lived with us until she was just 2 months short of 100.
Wow.
Why weren't you raised by your parents?
Say that
We
again?
don't
Why
even
was she
know
not
that.
raised by your parents? Why was your maternal grandmother and grandfather taking care of you instead of your parents?
My parents, because she was in the mainland. I mean, she wasn't, and my parents was in Hawaii, living in Honolulu. So she was living in New York City.
No, you got the wrong
My-
person. You're
you
talking
said why
about your
wasn't-
parents. Why didn't your parents?
Yeah, because my parents were living in Honolulu, and so it was convenient for us to get her from New York City to come to Iowa.
He's got it mixed up.
He's
He
asking
wants to know why you weren't
why you
raised
were
by
raised.
your
Yeah,
parents.
why you were raised, yeah.
Because the house there was old, and I guess my mother didn't.
It
so-
was a multi-generational family.
They had an old house too, I think.
The
my
brothers,
mother and
the
father.
grandmother, the parents.
Yeah, you're right. Why
The
wasn't
grandmother lived in the same house as her parents.
No, because they came and visited. She said they would come and visit on the weekends,
Right.
is what she said.
My father would
trolley.
come on the trolley because he didn't drive. Yeah,
So
and
they
so
did not live in the same home.
no, right. I didn't live, until I came back from Graceland, then I lived with my parents.
Were they working and that's why they couldn't live where you were?
In a way, and, he had to take care of his mother. And so, and my grandmother raised me. And so I guess their house was an old house, and my mother I guess they didn't want me to live with them.
By the way, even the house that she lived in with her grandparents was a multi-family
Generational.
dwelling. In the basement was
Yeah, apartment-like house.
your uncle and
Uh-huh.
his family.
Yeah,
On each level, in front and back, they were
Yeah.
just people
Well,
everywhere.
it's only kind of a Western tradition to do it the way most of us are used to.
Right.
This is the pattern for most of the world.
Right,
okay, have your relatives, yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
yeah.
Phyllis and I have talked about that a long time ago. It's a different culture. Her
Yeah.
Chinese culture
Right.
is what she was raised in.
Right.
And I've always found that very interesting.
Yeah.
How hard has it been for you to leave that culture and leave your family and live here in the States?
No, it wasn't difficult for me. I didn't think it was difficult on that. And,
Because she was so,
Okay,
Entrenched
okay,
in
Phyllis,
me.
let's stay with Phyllis. We'll move on from this. Phyllis, will you talk about when you were baptized and the spiritual experiences, how you felt about all of that? How you felt about God, and church?
well, living next to the church, you know, I could see, and people come in, and then I helped play the piano. I was right there participating with the church. And I could see on Wednesday nights we had prayer service, and I could see the gathering there. And I went to camps, so that helped me spiritually, I think, attending camps. And
When were you baptized?
I think I was 8 or 9, maybe a little older. Yeah, and I was baptized the same time, I think, with my uncle there, and Makiki Church in there, so that was nice.
So when did your family first get introduced to the church?
I think my my aunt, my mother also was maybe in high school or maybe even out of high school there. Yeah, my mother became members of the church and was very active in the church there. And yeah, they had so that's how I became members.
Did you enjoy teaching school?
I not sure. I had struggled in a way too, on that, and I'm glad when I worked in as a bookkeeper or at the Willows. I worked at a restaurant after business school, and I enjoyed that too. So I was, but since I had taken education, then I took it 2 years in time. Then after 2 years, then Jennifer came along, and so I stopped teaching, and that gave me an excuse to be at home.
Right on.
So that was my, yeah. kind of stayed home. And Bill taught then too. Then he got his teaching. Then we were living in Creston at that time. So,
I know you have lots of skills. One of them is quilting. You're a beautiful quilter. When did you begin all of the sewing?
well, it was in Creston, I think, that I had started there. I did take a class there in Creston.
To your quilting class?
Yeah, it was a night class that Joyce's, she had a shop there.
Yeah.
And then I did take that. And then we moved to Creston, to Lamoni then, and that's how.
And you got with the mites.
Yeah, with the mites. I enjoyed that.
So you didn't sew as a child?
I after in high school, I did take some sewing classes in high school. Yeah, and I did take some sewing.
Piano lessons,
And piano lessons too.
Chinese lessons.
Yes, I did take some Chinese, not classes though, but then that was, my grandmother could understand, my maternal grandmother could understand English. So, I wasn't forced to
Learn
speak
Chinese.
Chinese, and that was bad, I think. But I did try to go to Chinese school, but when you're older, it doesn't come easy
No.
for me. It didn't come easy. I did try and take Chinese school classes at night, and then, but like I said, it wasn't easy, and she could understand. Yeah, I did not. So, that was,
Phyllis, can I ask you a question? As an observer of you, you seem to, you said you grew up next to the church, and that means that probably whenever the lights were on, you were in there. But you seem to be at a different level of daily practice of prayer and study, and just, the way that you're on every event on Zoom, Wednesday night you're always there. You seem to be, in my estimation, at a different level of devotion to Jesus and God. Can you just talk to that a little bit?
well, my mother was devoted to it because at night sometimes she would pray on her knees, and I know my paternal grandmother, every time when I went and visit, she had a pillow next to her bed and she would kneel and pray. Although she was not a member of our church, but she would tell me how she had been blessed when she was growing up, or in China or whatever, that she had a cut on her forehead, and she was told to get a piece of leaves or something to put on it to stop the bleeding, and she would tell me. And I would take her to where she worshiped together. When I lived with them and I could drive, I would take her to where she worshiped, and she would, like I said, would have a pillow next to her bed and kneel and pray. And this was my paternal grandmother. I didn't live with her until I came back from Graceland, and then I lived with her. But my mother would take me on weekends maybe to stay with them in their bedroom anyway, and then I would know my grandmother, my paternal grandmother there, and uncle too. That uncle was not married, and he took care of his mother there, and so I'm the only grandchild of my paternal grandmother anyway, and that's it. So.
But follow up, Bill, wouldn't you agree? I don't speak silliness here. You live with this woman. Isn't it safe to say that she's one of the more diligent, try to get close to God today people you've ever known?
Well, I can tell you one thing. From the moment we get up for the next 2 hours.
This is what I wanna hear.
Every day, she's in her office studying and praying. 2 hours every morning.
Hours.
And I say,
Quite 2 hours.
when are we gonna have breakfast?
Not that bad.
To which Phyllis says,
Yeah, every day. Every day.
But Phyllis, what's up with that? I mean, why that's so
But
devoted?
I'm dependent on the Lord. I mean, that's my life, I guess.
She just finished the Book of Mormon for the umpteenth time. And
I
now,
don't know about umpteen time. but-
well, that's a figure of speech
Thank you.
So,
for more than once.
anyway, yes.
have you ever experienced racism towards you?
Not really. I have not felt, no.
But her aunt, who just, by the way, we're going to Hawaii, we're leaving July 4th. We're going back to a memorial service of her aunt that was 100, and just a few months before that, the other aunt passed away at almost 101. And the one that passed away at 101 always expressed the Japanese and the Chinese did not get along. Just employees.
Because she was.
They worked in the school systems. And for instance, the Japanese would be the cooks, and the Chinese would be the housekeepers, the janitors, because they couldn't get along. And I don't know in other groups of society or other levels, but there was a lot of conflict, and that was talked to me, and not too many years ago.
But when I grew up in school, I had a lot of Japanese classmates that I hung around with.
Really?
Yes, oh yes. Oh, that didn't bother me. In fact, the congregations in Hawaii, we would have a congregation mainly Japanese, members. And we went to high school together. And I was friendly with them. No, I didn't have that. And my classmates, I would walk to school with them, and she was Japanese. So I didn't have that problem at all. I don't know about them, but I had no problem with that.
What happened to the Japanese congregation after Pearl Harbor?
Oh, that I don't know, because I was just in kindergarten, I think, when that happened. So, yeah.
By the way, her uncle that adopted all those kids, he was working as a civilian that very Sunday, December 7th, right on the waters at the base when Pearl Harbor happened, the bombing. And he didn't get hurt or anything, but when he left, he never came back. He took up a new profession. And she was, I've said this many times, she was born in there when Pearl Harbor happened. She was
Yeah,
like
we
one
had
in
bomb
some of
shelter
those
too,
pictures.
in kindergarten. I
Went to a
remember
bomb
that, a
shelter.
bomb shelter, there outside of our kindergarten classroom. But we didn't have to at that time. I know my aunt, they wore gas masks, but I didn't have that, experience for that. But they would talk about that they had to carry a gas mask.
Phyllis, what did your folks think about Belle Weaver?
My mother came up, my mother was there for our wedding.
Wow.
In fact. My mother was.
Answer
No,
the.
my father was fine with it, no problem. My father,
My parents were happy for me.
Yes, I can understand.
Yeah, and she came to live with us, his mother did,
Okay.
towards the end of her life, and she stayed with us. Yeah, that's, so,
What do you like about living in Lamoni?
I like it because I'm close to my daughters, my grandchildren are here, and the church is, part of my life, and so I'm
I know
thankful
the
for that.
rest of your family attend Bloomington and you're here. Is that, why is
Oh,
that?
I chose to be, because to me, the location, I wanted to be Ramona. I didn't, I thought this was most convenient for me, living here in the town. And I didn't. So that was my reason. I think that should be.
So we looked all over for houses, mainly in the country. I wanted to live in the country. And we looked down, south and north. We even looked at that house that burnt down, on Elks Chapel. We looked at that house. And then my daughter called me up one day, Julie, and said, "Hey, I see a sign of a house for sale down."
Out in the country.
No,
Yeah.
down.
Yeah, no, where we live now.
Kind of in the country.
Yeah, Spruce. And I think she went down and looked at it. I don't know how long Jim had the house up for sale, but that was in summer of 2009. And I don't think we were 2 weeks deciding to buy it. But then he said, well, I've got to have an auction, so I think we bought it, we officially bought it in October of 2009, and then we had to completely remodel it. And we moved officially in March of 2010 after.
Wow.
Phyllis, tell us a little bit about your children and your grandchildren.
Oh, my children, okay. Well, we have 2 daughters, but they're 7 years apart. And Jennifer is the oldest, and they're 7 years apart.
She's 53.
Well, and she's a teacher, teaches math, and let's see, and they both played, Jennifer played in the band when she was growing up, and Julie was a smart singer, and then, let's see, Jennifer, what else about Jennifer? And she lives here in Lamoni, and she has,
She graduated from Graceland,
yeah. they're
married
both
her
graduates.
husband from Graceland.
Yeah.
Both of them did.
And Julie just got her, she was teaching Mount Air, and she just got her master's degree.
Double master. She already had a master's, and she got a master's at the University of Iowa in library science.
And so she just gonna get a job with AEA.
Yeah, she quit her job at 5 years at Mount Air and is now going to be the librarian for AEA, which is going to be you hear all the talk about AEA, but the library isn't. None of the school systems can hire libraries. They can't find librarians. And so AEA, Julie will be in charge of like 4 or 5 schools as a librarian at AEA. She won't be doing the stuff that she'll be organizing, and they'll have employees.
Okay, back to Phyllis.
Mount Air papers.
Back to
they-
Phyllis. We're coming back.
That's okay.
Now your grandchildren.
Oh, my grandchildren, we have 6 grandchildren. Okay. And each of them has 3 children. Jennifer has Ryan, and he's married, and,
5 boys and a girl.
yeah, 5 boys and a girl, and grandchildren, granddaughter, one guy. And the oldest lives in Rockford, Illinois, and his wife is, he married a girl from Peru, and she's working on her,
She's gonna be a pharmacist, she's gonna
Pharmacist.
graduate next year.
yeah, but he works at a hotel there, and then it's kind of supporting her. And then Tyler and Megan, which is Jennifer's 3 children. Tyler is going to Drake, both Tyler and Megan are going to Drake University, where their father works. Jim works there at Drake. And then Julie's 3 boys, she has 3 boys. And the oldest, he's going to, over at Illinois. And,
Peoria.
or, what's this school's name, is,
Monmouth,
Monmouth.
where the Grayson president's gonna,
yes, yes.
she's gonna be the president of
He will
Monmouth.
graduate next year. And then, what you call, the second boy is up
In Kenosha, Wisconsin, at Carthage, Illinois, and at Carthage, Wisconsin, I didn't say that right. It's at Kenosha, Wisconsin, and the name of the college is Carthage, and it used to be in Carthage, Illinois, where Joseph Smith was killed.
and then he's
They
gonna
moved the
graduate
house.
next year too also. So we'll have three grandsons will be graduating.
Wow.
And Cannon is at
Indian Hill.
Indian Hills, and he is going to computers, right? Is it computers? No.
Yeah, and he's doing an intern at Principal
Principal.
this summer.
And he's the youngest.
And he's gonna end up having the best job. I think. 2 years out of,
Indian Hill.
they almost guarantee if you get through Indian Hills, Principal will hire you.
Really?
Really?
Yeah, so that's our grandchildren. So it's kind of nice to be living in the same town as our
Yes.
grandchildren. We saw them growing up, and
Yeah,
Yeah.
we moved here to see our grandkids and none of them are here.
That's what happens.
Maybe they're trying to tell you something.
True. That is absolutely true.
yeah,
Phyllis, have you had times when you felt like you had trials and
yes.
besides bill, I mean, or bill, it's a bill, that could be your biggest one.
Yeah. Well, I depended on the Lord. I mean, I looked to Him a lot for my life. So I make it a point, even in the morning and at night, both, to make sure I offer my prayer to Him, and because, like I say, I am dependent on Him.
I go to bed at 9, she comes in at 10:30 after an hour and a half in her office with the lights off, so.
Oh, not quite, anyway. So, yeah, being
And
at,
how long have you practiced that? How long have you done that?
oh, not very,
Oh, yes.
long time. And, well, when before I came to Graceland too, I mean, I'm sure I did, I was, because my parents, I couldn't, they were living with me, and I was living with them, and so, and my grandparents, they didn't speak English, they, but he could understand English, and, yeah, so, but, yeah, I did, and I enjoyed our pastor, Dalhunas. The father was our pastor there in Palama and Palama Church. And then yes, that's,
How was your life when you was living with the mayor of Creston?
oh, yeah. I had a lot of phone calls. That's from the mayor, so, yeah. And, yeah, I think Jennifer was a young girl then too. No, Jennifer and Julie, anyway, they were.
Julie wasn't even, I was
Yeah.
ready to finish when Julie come along.
Well, okay, Jennifer was going there, yeah. And then, so as mayor, like I said, we had phone calls, when he was mayor, but not too bad, it wasn't too bad there.
Phyllis, what are some of the things that you've accomplished that you're really glad that you did?
Let's see. Well, I'm glad that I took piano lessons in a way that I could help with that, and I enjoyed that. To be able to sit at the piano and play, and then, and yes, oh yes, I'm glad I met Bill. That's true. That is true. That, right.
Whether they call that an accomplishment or not, we don't know, but.
Oh,
Now,
we're-
I'll be in my, I'll be,
Or this August,
I needed
we're
him.
going to be married 56 years, so that's not too bad.
So how, he said June was your first date, then you were married in August.
yes.
How did that go so fast?
But we were old,
Well, yes, yes. I remember being
How
at
did
Graceland
it-
with you,
how did
but I
it-
didn't know it was your second time around.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
my second time around, so, and I was 20,
She actually knew that I was perfect for her.
Okay.
And if you
tell us.
know that,
How old were you?
just go with
when you
it,
got
right?
married?
I was 20, see, wait, now how old was, what was that?
Chantal, how old you were when you were married? How old were you?
Oh, she just turned, her birthday's July 1st. We got married
22.
August 24th. She turned 29, and I'm 7 months younger than she is.
Ah.
Yeah, so I was old.
So, I was 28 and a half.
So then you had your children, how old were you when your children were born?
So
Well-
I had Jennifer 2 years after we
Okay,
got
so
married,
you're
so.
31.
Yeah,
Julie,
so-
she was
and-
just
and-
under 40 when
Yeah, I was
Jennifer,
gonna say
Julie
was
was
yeah.
born. So I was, yeah, thankful for 2 girls.
Yeah, beautiful girls.
Yeah,
Lovely.
thankful. And yeah, and we got to go to Hawaii, take our trip to Hawaii.
How many times have you been back to Hawaii?
Oh,
Lots
how
and
many
lots.
times?
Well, the last time we were back was 7 years ago. We went, for some reason, we went back for our 25th high school anniversary. We went back for our 50th high school anniversary. We went back for our 60th high school anniversary. And now it's 67 years since she graduated. By the way, all the years that we've been around at Graceland, no one from her high school has come to Graceland. But in the last 2 years, I think five students have been coming to Graceland from her high. And she graduated from Farrington.
Was it a big high school?
And
Did you have
it was a
class?
big
Yeah,
school,
Big
I
class.
did.
big
Oh, yeah.
school.
Yes.
But they're,
Nancy, is there anything else we ought to be asking her?
When she went, I remember she went back for her mother's memorial cert, wasn't it your
That's
mother's
right,
memorial cert?
right.
Phyllis?
Yeah, when she
Bill-
passed
Bill
away,
didn't go
just
with you
before.
that time.
Yeah. When she
Oh,
passed away, I was
she would
there.
go back, I'd send her back a
And
lot
we're
of
going
times, and I
back,
wouldn't go.
and we're going back, this, in July for the youngest, aunt.
And taking your daughters?
Yes, my
I'm
daughters
taking
and their
everybody.
husbands. are going back
Well,
with
6
us.
of us are going.
Lovely, that's nice.
Because
Yes.
this aunt would come for their graduation and for when they got married. And so this aunt was special, I mean, for
Yeah.
us there. She was, yeah,
And Phyllis is quite a gardener too.
Oh, a gardener. I didn't realize you gardened.
This aunt here,
yes.
this
That's
one,
Aunt Molly.
that's Aunt Molly. She's the one that, she passed away several months ago, and she was 101, and her sister, and this memorial service they're having, it's actually for 3 people,
Oh, yeah, I do have.
and so we're going back for that.
Whose wedding is that?
Not wedding, it's a that wedding is our
That's
wedding.
our
That's
wedding,
your
but
wedding. That's what I
that's
wondered.
our
That's you.
wedding,
That's
but
you,
that's the
Phyllis.
aunt that passed away at 101.
And we
And
have
that
a
picture,
lei.
that picture was taken
Yes, my
56
aunt
years ago.
sent me the lei. Sent us the lei.
You know, you look like Ryan. You look like your grandson Ryan
A
there.
little
Yeah.
bit, yeah.
Or Tyler, I'm a
Tyler.
I'm a
Tyler,
duplicate of Tyler.
Or Tyler's a duplicate of you, perhaps.
Yeah.
Phyllis,
Yes,
will the memorial service be inside or, but your mother's, I remember you said it was just out at the cemetery.
yes. I think this time
It's just a funeral.
in a funeral home is gonna be.
And I'm a little disappointed because they're not going to go to the cemetery. They're gonna do that later. And I kind of, all 3 of the people that are
But they're gonna be
at the
buried
memorial service are gonna be buried
in my mother's.
on top of her mother. They do that.
grave.
Mother was buried in a traditional coffin, vault. But on top of her, they put a vault for ashes or, urns to be put in, and you could put 6 on top of her. So 3 of them are going on top of Phyllis's mother.
And then my father was buried with his mother and brother and sister. Yeah, there, and my Aunt Charlotte. My Aunt Charlotte passed away. She's the one that lived with us until, and then we took her ashes back to Hawaii.
Do you plan to have your ashes taken back to Hawaii?
No, I don't think so. I think I'm.
We're going to be
Right here.
buried next to Velma Rouge.
There you go.
But wait a minute, we moved her yesterday for the.
Phyllis, any last things you'd like to share with us about what keeps you so faithful and
Oh. I'm
That's I want to hear that one.
No, I guess maybe because of my background, my mother was dependent on the Lord, and so was my paternal grandmother.
so your heritage?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, our time is up, but it's been delightful to listen to you.
Okay, thank